Hello, Tadeo.
Nania.
We have so many wonderful questions from our viewers.
All right.
The first question is, how does one hone their vibration or frequency to their exact preferred reality series?
By following the formula, that's what it's designed to do. That's why we give it to you.
And this person is saying they've been having a challenging year energetically, and part of the year they felt like they were on a downward spiral. And they wanted to know how they can work with their belief system and shift into a positive reality, like with the rubber band analogy. And can surrendering be complementary to the formula to assist him in their preferred reality shift?
Yes, if you understand that surrendering is actually allowing the control you already have built into you to function properly, instead of trying to take control through the personality ego. Surrendering is surrendering to the control that's already built into you. So yes, of course, that kind of surrender can be completely compatible with the idea of following the formula, because it goes hand in hand with not assuming or insisting on a particular outcome, but allowing what needs to happen to manifest around you and then staying in that positive state to extract the benefit from it.
And how can we intentionally manifest what we want when we still have to interact with what's left of previous realities before the new ones become visible?
Well, again, it's not always about what you want, which can be a negative ego thing. Not always, but it can be. It's about knowing that you will attract what you need if you allow yourself to remain in the present, because the present is where everything happens. Connecting yourself continually to the idea of the so-called past is what may prevent you from living in the present, so you can receive whatever it is that needs to manifest for you in the present. So finding out in your belief system why you would still anchor yourself to past events, when you know that if you simply redefine yourself in the present, you've already changed your past as well, would be a good exploration and investigation for people to do, to allow themselves to understand why they may believe they have to hold on to things from the so-called past.
This person is saying that they've been following your teachings since they discovered you about 5 or 6 years ago, and yet they still find circumstances tend to dictate their state of being. Can you offer any suggestions on how to not take our cue from our circumstances?
All right, again, look at the language. Circumstances do not tend to alter your state of being. You choose to be altered by circumstances. You would have to ask yourself why. What are you getting out of choosing to go based on the idea of outside circumstances, as opposed to choosing what it is you say you prefer? So again, this requires honest self-investigation and an understanding of the beliefs that are attached to your motivational mechanism that would make it seem logical for you to choose something you say you don't prefer. Because again, you don't choose what you don't believe serves you on some level. So you must have a belief that choosing these things based on outside circumstances somehow serves you, somehow puts you in a place that you say is safer than the alternative. So it requires honest self-investigation to understand why you are choosing to go based on the idea of outside circumstances instead of the state of being you prefer to remain in.
So is that partly having to do with the idea that we actually are manifesting our experience, and the idea that it's not just happening to us, like fully accepting that this is a projection of consciousness, as opposed to
Correct.
I'm in this reality and these things are happening to me?
Correct. It's about taking full responsibility for what's happening. This is not a blame. It's control. It's knowing you are in control of what's happening. Even though you may not understand it, you may be testing yourself to see if you're still reacting the same old way to the circumstances, or whether you are going to respond to it differently, which is the true measure of change. It's not about whether the outside circumstances change that prove you have changed. It's about whether you respond differently to them that is the proof of change. And then the outside can possibly reflect the change that is truly happening within you, because you're not basing your state of being on outside circumstances.
So it really does come down to believing that this is a projection of consciousness that's coming through you and understanding how to relate to the projection that you're experiencing.
More than believing, it's knowing that it is.
And that's what really makes your frequency go up, is when you shift from believing to knowing.
Yes.
And so what actually determines our state of being?
The combination of belief systems that you hold to be true at any given moment in your personality structure.
Is it kind of like an equation where all of the beliefs are added together and the summary is
your frequency? Yes. Simply put, but yes.
So every time you change a belief that's negative into either something neutral or positive, that's changes your equation and gives you the opportunity to be a higher frequency.
Correct.
Okay. And what would a change in a belief system have to come from the motivational mechanism itself, or do these ideas operate on different levels?
The motivational mechanism is always involved. Now, as we have said, the unconscious mind is a repository of potential beliefs that represent the theme that you chose to explore. The subconscious mind is the gateway or valve that allows certain kinds of beliefs that fit your theme to come through to the conscious mind when you are ready for them. But the conscious mind always functions off the motivational mechanism because, again, it's a world of physical reality, it's a world of action, and the beliefs have to motivate you to take an action or create a state of being that is commensurate with the belief, so you have something to work with, whether it's positive or negative.
And does the idea of free will have to do with our capacity to change what beliefs we put into the motivational mechanism?
You always have the same capacity, but again, it depends on whether or not you believe that you do. You always have the free will to change your belief system. But if you have a belief that says you don't, you're using your free will to deny yourself the accessibility to your free will in a positive state. You're simply using your free will in a negative state.
And what is more powerful, belief systems or feelings and emotions when it comes to manifestation?
They work hand in hand. First, you have the belief. Then the belief uses emotions and thoughts and behaviors to reinforce itself and make itself seem real. Because again, remember, physical reality is a projection of consciousness. Classically said, it's an illusion. So the belief can't just be on its own. It has to generate the vibrational energy frequencies that you translate as feelings to make it feel that it's true, and the thought patterns to make you think that it's true, and the behavior modalities to allow you to behave as if it's true, so that you get the reflection, which then can reinforce it, and it completes the cycle. But it always starts with the belief. Without the emotional, shall we say, reinforcement, it wouldn't feel real. So beliefs use emotions, thoughts, and behaviors to make themselves seem solid, seem factual, seem real, so that you can actually participate in what you call physical reality. Otherwise, you would just sit there.
And how do we tell the difference between fear-based beliefs and logical planning ahead?
Well, if you plan something generally, but you are willing to allow for that to change, and you're not afraid for it to change, then you understand you're not operating out of fear-based beliefs. So you can plan, but always allow in the plan for things to change up a little bit, for there to be spontaneity and surprises, and go with the flow. Course correct as you go. You can have a general plan as an outline, but don't assume that it has to meet every single one of the markers that you originally designed in the plan. Allow there to be some flexibility. If you're not afraid to do that, then you're not operating out of a fear-based belief.
And along those lines, if there's a lot of activity where people are scamming other people around money, let's say, soliciting money from them in one way or another, does that mean that when you're approached by anyone that is asking you for money, that you have an immediate belief that this could potentially be a scammer, or do you approach it some other way that would be of a higher frequency?
Well, again, you can recognize from a high frequency that someone may be perpetrating a scam. It doesn't mean you have to emotionally react to it, but you can recognize it for what it is if you're sensitive enough to do so. Or you can certainly take the time to explore whether it is or not if you feel you have sufficient powers of discernment to be able to tell from their responses to your questions what it is they are being honest or dishonest about. So it might be an opportunity to allow yourself to hone your discernment capabilities, but you don't have to react to it emotionally to simply have the neutral observation that it could potentially be one way or the other. You can recognize that that's a potential feature on Earth, that many people may choose to scam others, but you can sit in a neutral space and determine whether or not that is true on a case-by-case basis, if you wish.
Okay, thank you. In the past year after contracting COVID, this individual suffered mentally with anxiety and panic attacks. And they wanted to know how they could deal with that anxiety and still be available for open contact, and whether or not the anxiety in that sense blocks them from having open contact.
The anxiety would perhaps block or slow down the potential for open contact, but they simply need to understand by examining their belief systems what they're anxious about. The question is being asked in too vague a way for us to pinpoint what the specific reason is that they choose to experience anxiety. There's got to be a belief or a fear behind what they are afraid of so that they can understand where the anxiety is coming from. That would be the first step. Why are they anxious? What are they anxious about? Then perhaps they can move on from there to determine how they can let go of it by understanding that there's no reason to be anxious about whatever it is they're anxious about. And therefore, they can raise their vibration and make themselves potentially more capable of having contact.
So is there a relationship between contracting some kind of virus and then changes that occur within the person that then would be, say, anxiety? How does a virus change the way you experience reality? Maybe that's better.
Well, it doesn't. You change the way you experience reality based on your belief system relationship to the idea of the virus. The virus is simply an opportunity to examine how you will respond to its existence.
And that's why, like, some people will have dreams about it if they've got it, and they'll have a positive interaction with
Yes.
the virus, whereas other people experience it as killing them.
Yes. Everything has a level of consciousness that can be communicated with. If you are open to that, you will receive whatever information is necessary for you to utilize and apply to the situations of your belief system so that you can understand how to create the relationship you really prefer with any form of life.
Can you share with us your definition and understanding of the word grace and state of grace?
Yes. To put it in the simplest possible terms, it's a state of innocence, a state of purity, a state of allowance and acceptance, like a child, in a sense, that hasn't yet unlearned how to be its natural self. State of grace is the innocence of the natural self, the acceptance of unconditional love, and the acceptance of self within all that is as an aspect of all that is. So, but again, simply, it could be called a state of innocence.
And you see that innocence, of course, in babies and young children.
Yes.
And then it seems that individuals change at different stages of life and become more and more, quote unquote, realistic or
Well, again,
naive.
it's about the idea of finally getting to the point where you are going to start experiencing the theme you chose to explore. When you say realistic, it simply means, all right, you have accepted that you have this theme to explore, and the experience of physical reality will help you do that. And you accept that and you move forward.
So why does, in many species, you see this sort of loss of sweetness, I guess? The survival mechanism becomes much more dominant. Is that part of what you're explaining to us?
On that level, yes. You start to accept that you have a role in physical reality based on the collective consciousness and what it needs to experience, and you start playing that role.
So was Earth always like a predatory planet? And can you help us understand about our relationship to having an environment that is essentially predatory?
It was not always such, but the idea again is that the Earth is what you might call a tough school. It is a school of cycles. It is a school of positive and negative and polarities and experience of such. So it has fluctuated back and forth many times in different ways. But the idea, as we have said, is that the primary environment of your planet as you understand it in nature is predatory, mostly because you are still exploring the idea of predation. Remember that as you change yourself in the present, you change your past. So the past you think was always there wasn't always there.
And it seems like the dinosaurs were extremely predatory.
That's the past you believe in right